The early 1950s produced some of Paramount Pictures' most memorable films, including Shane, A Place in the Sun, White Christmas, Sunset Boulevard, and Stalag 17. But it was William Wyler's Roman Holiday which captured the innocence and magic of that era.
I'd like to do just whatever I like, the whole day long.
Things like having your hair cut, eating gelato.
Yes, and I'd like to sit at a sidewalk cafe and look in shop windows, walk in the rain, have fun, and maybe some excitement.
Tell you what, why don't we do all those things together?
But don't you have to work?
Work? Now, today is going to be a holiday.
Audiences love the fairy tale of a young princess who runs away from her official duties and spends a glorious and unforgettable day with a handsome newspaperman. By 1953, William Wyler had long established himself as one of Hollywood's most successful and brilliant dramatic directors, having won the Best Director Academy Award for Mrs. Miniver and The Best Years of Our Lives. But Roman Holiday would be his first comedy in almost 20 years.
I'm constantly amazed by the quality of my father's work and how many of the films, so many decades later, still resonate so well.
You know, he started out at Universal making 6-day westerns and became one of the biggest directors in town.
The thing about William Wyler that struck me, even as a kid, was he was absolutely unique unto himself. And I mean, the respect that Wyler has as a filmmaker, I give him as a human being.
He was an artist, and he knew that, and he behaved that way, and he turned out marvelous, marvelous pictures.
My father had a terrible time deciding on what film to make next. Usually it was a struggle that took months.
Wyler wouldn't do a script that wasn't mechanically properly structured.
The story for Roman Holiday was written by Dalton Trumbo. Trumbo was a highly regarded screenwriter in Hollywood, but in the early 1950s he was considered a communist sympathizer by the House Subcommittee on Un-American Activities and was blacklisted by the film community.
I never knew until much later that Dalton Trumbo had written that screenplay because everyone kept it a deep secret.
Hollywood's had a lot of dark moments in our business, mostly bright, now and then dark moments. We had a period of the blacklist, for instance. Dalton Trumbo contributed greatly to Roman Holiday. His name was not on the screen.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I believe I have the right to be confronted with any evidence which supports this question. I should like to see what you have.
Dalton Trumbo had just been investigated by HUAC, and he wouldn't talk, and he was going to be imprisoned for, he had a year's prison sentence for communist sympathies and for not talking.
I think it's a wonderful story that the writer Ian Hunter fronted for Trumbo.
So he realized he was going to have to get some money for his wife and children while he was in jail, so he quickly wrote this screenplay under a pseudonym.
He got $50,000, which he gave to Trumbo.
And Frank Capra was originally going to direct it, and then he found out it was Dalton Trumbo, and he got nervous. William Wyler stepped in.
My father was not afraid to hire people who were blacklisted.
Trumbo still managed to write 18 screenplays under pseudonyms during the dark years he was considered an outcast by Hollywood. And it would be 4 more decades before he would officially be recognized for his work.
I think later the Writers Guild saw that it was put back on the screen, probably credits like that. It was a tragic period for our industry. But I think our industry is trying to reconcile those days and try to come back.
Wyler was keenly aware that the casting of Roman Holiday would be critical to the picture's success. Initially, he had considered Elizabeth Taylor and Gene Simmons for the role of the princess, but since neither was available, he chose a young, unknown actress, and by doing so, launched the film career of one of Hollywood's brightest stars. While working in a small film in Monte Carlo, Audrey Hepburn was spotted by the noted French writer Colette Colette, intrigued by the young actress's beauty and demeanor, insisted that she be considered for the title role for the upcoming Broadway production of her play, Gigi, a part that Hepburn easily won. Coincidentally, at the same time, Paramount had also heard about this young actress.
The first big picture that Audrey Hepburn did for us, of course, was Roman Holiday, which was shot in Rome. And it was the first picture she'd done in America.
I mean, she had had roles before, but not in major films. She'd done Broadway, she'd done Gigi on Broadway, so she wasn't just the ugly duckling who suddenly sprouted, but there was a little of that. There was a little bit of a fairy tale story in her own leap to stardom.
Well, I think my father was very excited to find Audrey Hepburn. It was something of a fluke because she was completely unknown. He decided to do a test of her, and although he wasn't able to stay and film it himself, he told the director to ask the cameraman and the sound man to keep them both rolling after the director said cut, so that she would relax and they would be able to see her in a relaxed state.
You spent the whole war in Arnhem?
Yes.
Wasn't it pretty awful?
Yes, it was very bad.
But did you entertain the people there yourself? Is that how you began?
No, not quite how I began. I went to ballet school once I knew I was settled there for quite a while. Didn't know how long the war was going to last, so I went to a ballet school and learned to dance. And in about 1944, about a year before the end of the war, I was quite capable of performing. And it was a sort of some way in which I could make some contribution, and I did give performances to collect money for the underground, which always needed money.
And what about the Germans? What did they do about it?
Let's know about it.
Just as Audrey Hepburn is in a class by herself, it seems more so now even than she did at the time, I think. She stood up in a way that maybe other stars of the 50s haven't.
She was way above us. She was so darling, she was so wonderful, so helpful. She was not Hollywoodish at all, but she could act.
She is her own romantic mystique. She's not really plugged into some kind of general 50s dynamic. I think she carries her own romantic system with her. She's just one of a kind.
Can I sleep here?
Well, that's the general idea.
Can I have a silk nightgown with rosebuds on it?
I'm afraid you'll have to rough it tonight. In these.
Good job.
Sorry, honey, but I haven't worn a nightgown in years.
For the role of Joe Bradley, the male lead, Wyler first offered the part to Hollywood favorite Cary Grant. But after reading the script, Grant declined, knowing that all of the attention in this picture would be centered around the princess. Wyler, knowing he would still need a prominent actor to counter newcomer Hepburn, offered the role to Gregory Peck.
I always felt every time someone sent me a comedy script that Cary Grant had seen it first and had turned it down.
If I were you, I would try some other line of business, like mattress testing.
Is this the princess?
Yes, Mr. Bradley, that is the princess. It isn't Annie Oakley, Dorothy L'Amour, or Madame Chiang Kai-shek. Take a good look at her. You might be interviewing her again someday.
Am I fired?
No, you're not fired. When I want to fire you, you won't have to ask. You'll know you're fired. The man's mad.
I had done a good deal of comedy in the theater, even some farce. So I jumped at the opportunity to play Roman Holiday.
If you can possibly imagine what it was like for me many years ago, a totally unknown Hofer, to be cast in a Hollywood movie opposite Gregory Peck, the beautiful, quiet, gentle hero of countless marvelous movies. In my innocence, I thought he'd be just like that. He was.
Gregory Peck, my gosh, he could do it all. He could do The Gunfighter. He could do Moby Dick. he could do Gentleman's Agreement, he could do Roman Holiday. He was a statue of strength in everything that he did.
Well, Greg Peck was as we say, a considerable man. There was a real presence there and a real weight and a sense of somebody who was not flighty and not superficial and really cared enough to take the time. And he was unrushable.
There was something in this pairing of Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn that was so chemically right. There was something that they were both tall and dark and shy and exploding on the screen. I mean, Peck was there a little bit already, and she was an unknown who just dazzled at first glance.
He's a good actor, and he's a serious actor. And you won't find a harder worker.
He was one of those people that no matter what else was going on, when it came up against him, it all slowed right down. And he really was a very kind of a powerful presence in that sense.
She doesn't know who I am or what I do. Look, Irving, this is my story. I dug it up. I gotta protect it.
She's really...
Your tintypes are gonna make this little epic twice as valuable.
The princess goes slumming.
You're in for 25% of the take.
Finally, as Peck's sidekick, photographer Powell, Wyler decided upon Eddie Albert. Albert had worked previously with Wyler, and the director knew that he would be perfect for the role.
One more round, and I'm going to throw you gents right out in the snow.
Say, what
I got to get up early. Date with Her Royal Highness, who will graciously pose for some pictures.
I met Eddie Albert when he was at Warner Brothers through my good friend Jimmy Cagney. And Eddie did a lot of pictures out there. But for Roman Holiday, he changed completely physically because Eddie always had a crew cut. And in this picture, he talked with William Wyler, and he let his hair grow long, and he grew a beard, which was very unusual for Eddie Albert. And he was so effective. He was just great in that for the third person.
And Eddie Albert was just a lovely guy who always had a joke. He and my father both had terrific senses of humor and loved to play and had a very good time together.
He's just an extraordinary person. And the fact that at 94 he's funny and loving and articulate and caring and still the head of his family.
Hit him again, Smitty!
With his cast now in place, Wyler was ready to begin the arduous task of preparing to make a major motion picture in Italy. At the time the camera began to roll on Roman Holiday, location shooting, especially in foreign countries, was a rarity.
You know, it used to be if we made a picture that took place in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and England, we could do it here on our back lot, or with what we call a transparency, which we were on a transparency stage with the rear projector projecting the locale of where you were supposed to be.
Well, there were a lot of reasons why my father wanted to shoot in Rome. Some of them were professional and some were personal. Before that, movies weren't really made on location very often, and the studio wanted their directors in the studio under their control.
And I think that helped open up locations all over the world, because today Hollywood is located in California, but the motion picture industry is all over the world.
Rome was the third character in the film, the third star. It was fantastic, and no, people hadn't traveled that much. I mean, now, so what? Rome here today, Rome today, Paris tomorrow.
To be able to shoot in this beautiful city with these wonderful locations, it was a time when there weren't even many cars in the city, mostly scooters. And he used to say that for every location, there were 5 choices.
So it wasn't a super production at all. And yet they managed to do this extraordinary shoot, very of the moment. It almost looks like a new wave film sometimes, the way you're running through the streets of Rome, the way the Nouvelle Vague did in Paris, you know.
It was very interesting, though. William Wyler and Adolph Zukor and Frank Freeman thought that the story was so strong, and they thought that the characters and the story should be the central point of this and not the location particularly. Let the location blend into it. So that's why they filmed it in black and white rather than color.
I think the black and white adds to it, but again, that is a sort of sophisticated taste. I mean, I think the whole idea when Turner was going to colorize everything was it would make it more appealing to the mass audiences, just like mass audiences don't want subtitles. There's something a little bit esoteric in having black and white now, of course, and it's done for that reason. To me, there's something about Audrey Hepburn, well, and Sabrina too, that is just made for black and white, but then you see her in funny face and she's made for color. She's just a woman for all colors and all seasons. It's just, you can't pin her down.
The wardrobe for Roman Holiday was created by the legendary Paramount costume designer Edith Head. Winning an Academy Award for the film, this was the 4th Oscar for Head. In this rare Roman Holiday costume test footage, Audrey Hepburn models some of Edith Head's designs.
They were a wonderful team. First off, Audrey Hepburn knew fashion. She knew what was good for her. She didn't want to cover her neck, all it was long and that. She didn't want to do that. And she knew she was thin, but she didn't want to be padded out or anything, as some actresses did.
May I present Your Highness with some commemorative photos of your visit to Rome?
The dailies started coming in because the film was printed there in Rome. They saw it first and then sent it here. And within a week, everybody on the lot was saying, wait till you see this Audrey Hepburn. She is marvelous in this picture. They say she's tall, thin. Some people even said skinny. She's got this long neck. She's got the bony structure. But she's like a little wasp. She's just love her. And the word got all around. We started getting calls from Hedda Hopper, Luella Parsons, Army Archard, who wanted to come over and see some footage on her. And the word just spread. In 2 weeks, she was the talk of this lot.
How could she not be? She was so exquisite, and there was this combination of sort of tomboy. There's this slender, boyish figure. And it seems to me it was one of those things that just worked right from the beginning. Wyler was known as a perfectionist. I think Hepburn was quite nervous at first because it was a big, big deal for her. I think Gregory Peck was a huge factor in relaxing her. Apparently he was just wonderful. He saw, the minute he saw her, he knew. He recognized that she was going to be big, and he called up the studio and said, you've got to put her name above the title with me. She's going to be a huge star.
And the contract had been drawn up as Gregory Peck in Roman Holiday and introducing Audrey Hepburn. And I called him and I said, this cannot be. This is going to be ridiculous. This girl is going to win the Academy Award in her first role. And her name must be up above the title with mine. And this is not just a simple altruism and generosity on my part. It would look foolish any other way. And she just hit the screen like a bomb.
My father did have a special touch with actors. Part of it was that he understood people in a way. He was able to make an actor feel so secure and so comfortable that they would try things, be more adventurous than they might ordinarily be. He varied his techniques with each actor. For example, he would be very solicitous of someone like Audrey Hepburn. He might be tougher on someone like Gregory Peck. He just knew how to push people in the way that they would best respond.
William Wyler certainly was exacting. I used to say he was tough. He said, I'm not tough, I'm just exacting. I know what I want, and I have to keep doing it until I get it. And he was in a scene, and he I don't know, he was like, take 35 or 40, and someone said, Willie, if you took a Brownie camera, you wouldn't have to take 46 shots to get what you want.
I always looked on it as a chance to do a little bit better and to search for something new, something that would strike him as being exactly right. And wouldn't have bothered me if he'd done 127 takes. When we did the Mouth of Truth scene, which is that monument in Rome, and the legend is, if you dare to put your hand in the mouth of truth, if you've lied, it'll bite your hand off. Well, we had that little scene to do, and I remembered an old bit that Red Skelton used to do. And when he'd shake hands with somebody, he'd say, it'd come like that. Well, I said on the side to Willie Wyler, supposing I spring that on Audrey when I put my hand in the mouth of truth. Is it too corny? Is it too awful? He said, oh, no. He said, do it. Let's see her reaction, but don't tell her you're going to do it. So when I put my hand in there, and then when I brought it out, well, Audrey just screamed and went bonkers, and it was a wonderful, spontaneous moment. Hello. That was only one take.
I remember that it was a very hot summer in Rome. There were a lot of big scenes in old palaces where the temperature would get up to 110 or so. I was 12 and my sister was 9, and my father decided that he would squeeze us into a scene at the Trevi Fountain. Gregory Peck is looking wildly for a camera to document the Princess Audrey Hepburn's getting her hair cut off. He sees this bunch of schoolgirls and tries to get the camera from around the neck of one of them. That's my sister who got the close-up. And a girl in the background, me, calls for the teacher. My line was, hey, Miss Weber.
Miss Weber? Just for a couple of minutes.
My sister and I were exercised because all the other girls got $30. And my father said he wouldn't dream of putting us on the payroll, and gave us each 1,000 lira, which was about $1.50.
As the film was being prepared for release, a true life drama involving a princess and a commoner was taking place in Britain. Princess Margaret, the sister of Queen Elizabeth, was seeing Peter Townsend, a divorced commoner. Margaret had hoped to marry Townsend, but as in the film, duty proved to be more important than happiness, and sadly their romance ended.
While I was doing the publicity campaign for Audrey Hepburn on Roman Holiday about Academy Award, there was an event that happened over in England that was similar, where a royal was involved with a commoner. In this case, it was Princess Margaret and Peter Townsend.
This was made at the time that Margaret was having to decide whether or not to marry Peter Townsend. So this was very much in everybody's mind and interest. But there was a kind of almost arranged marriage feeling about marriages in the 50s.
It seems as though the romance between Princess Margaret and Peter Townsend was just serendipitously beneficial to the movie.
And this was a big romance on all the headlines of all the pages, and it just played perfectly for our campaign because that's what our story was about. Somebody even accused me of arranging this royal romance with this commoner, and I have to tell you here, I didn't do it.
It came as no surprise when Roman Holiday was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. In the 1950s, the Oscars were hosted in both Hollywood and New York, with simultaneous broadcasts. Roman Holiday had won 2 Oscars earlier in the evening, but anticipation was electric when the name of the Best Actress Award was announced.
Ladies and gentlemen, in New York City, Miss Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday.
It's too much. I want to say thank you to everybody who in these past months and years have helped, guided, and given me so much. I'm truly, truly grateful and terribly happy.
It has been 50 years since Roman Holiday was released in theaters. Today, the film is still considered one of the film world's most enduring classics. But the film is more than that. It is a testament to the many people who helped bring this motion picture to the screen. To William Wyler, whose direction was unsurpassed. To Dalton Trumbo, who wrote an unforgettable story, but who would not receive credit until many decades later. To Gregory Peck, whose remarkable talents helped define this timeless classic. And to Audrey Hepburn, the young, unknown actress who would become one of Hollywood's greatest legends.
I will cherish my visit here in memory as long as I live.